Hi, this is Ajanette Oberg, and I am here to cover your chapters 9 and 10 lecture. The two chapters go together. Both of them address developmental psychology, which is a specialty area in psychology that looks at how human beings develop across the entire lifespan. We call it from womb to tomb. That lifespan is broken up into developmental periods or age ranges that we study over time. Additionally, within this field, we study how people change across what we call developmental domains, and we look at how they change physically, cognitively, socially, and emotionally. And so today I'm going to take you through the lecture. And first of all, your chapter starts off by discussing some concepts just about the general field of developmental psychology. It is interdisciplinary, meaning that multiple disciplines contribute to the field, including, the medical profession, anthropology, sociology, psychology. A lot of information relevant to the nursing profession comes into play in the study of developmental psychology, which is why this particular psychology course, Human Development Across the Lifespan, is often a requirement for nursing programs or any other graduate programs related to nursing or healthcare. So again, we look at studying from womb to tomb, so from conception to death. We discuss relevant theories that apply over the lifespan, as well as how people change in those various developmental domains. As I mentioned, it's physical, cognitive, social, and emotional. We also have two specific types of research designs that are specific to developmental psychology, because in developmental psychology, we want to look at an additional independent variable, or the effects of age or time on development. So we want to look at maybe how memory changes from early adulthood to middle adulthood to late adulthood. We have two different research designs that allow us to study the effects of age or time. We can either do a longitudinal study, where we take one group of people, maybe 500 people, we study them once when they're 20, once when they're 40, and then again when they're 60. So we're following one group of people over a long period of time. And the same participants are involved in every single measurement that's taken throughout the study. And then we compare. And one of the advantages is because it's the same group of participants, we don't have these individual variables that play a factor in the results. The same participant one here was participant one here and participant one here, and vice versa with all the other participants in the study. And so that being said, we know that any differences between the three comparison points or measurement points are because of the aging factors that are involved. And then another option, here's some of the challenges with longitudinal studies, is that people die off. We experience what we call attrition in research. We lose participants. And that could be because they move away, they lose interest in participating in the study, or they literally do physically die off. And then additionally, researchers might die off too, in that they might go to other schools, they might lose their funding. So longitudinal studies take a lot of time and expense. So an alternative is to do a cross-sectional research, and instead of taking, let's say, 500 participants here, I'm going to take maybe, let's say, 600 participants. I'm going to take 200 that are in their 20s, 200 that are in their 40s, and 200 that are in their 60s. And instead of following them over a long period of time, I'm going to do all three measurements all at once. And it's going to be a between groups comparison. Instead of the same participants in each of the groups, it's now a between groups comparison, and I'm comparing a group of 20-year-olds to a group of 40 to a group of 60. The challenge with that is now, since I have different participants in each group, there could be other individual variables that might be contributing to the difference, and not just the aging factor. And additionally, there might be something unique about this cohort than there is about this cohort. And a cohort is a group of people that you travel through time with. And when you think that maybe there's something distinctly different about 20-year-olds today than 60-year-olds, technology, they're exposed to, social media, and the education and kind of larger cultural values are just very different. So that may be accounting for the differences between the groups in memory or attention, let's say, not just the fact that memory or attention changes over time with age. And so those age-related differences are potentially problematic. Those cohort differences are particularly problematic. Okay, so some of the great debates in developmental psychology include nature versus nurture. For years, psychologists have been trying to debate, are we born the way that we are, or does our environment or our experience or nurturing make us the way we are? And so biological factors, genetic, or whether it's, brain differences, or, whether we have some other biological component like biochemical differences, those might account for how nature might influence how we are. Nurture is like maybe we were all raised differently, we grew up in different neighborhoods, we grew up in different school systems, each of us had different opportunities, and we had different environmental experiences. Those are nurture differences. And what we really found through the years is that nature and nurture combine. Nurture can influence nature, and nature can influence nurture. So the two work together to ultimately shape us into who we are. So this has been kind of evidenced through this argument has been evidenced through this concept of tabula rasa, which was presented by Watson. We were born a blank slate, and everything that happens to us over our lifetime kind of paints the pictures and the colors of Agenette. Or there's this nature component, I'm just naturally maturing, and maybe I have these particular genes that are going to trigger things to activate in me or not activate in me. Or my personality is just a natural maturation of life and experience. So another kind of key aspect of the nature versus nurture debate is kind of this notion of, are there these certain critical periods or times in which we're particularly sensitive, or it's necessary to expose us to certain things? Or is it our overall full experience that contributes to who we are? We certainly know with language development that those first 6 years of life are really critical. We need to hear language, we need to interact with the language, we need to express the language, we pick up the grammatical rules of language, we pick up vocabulary, and it just happens kind of naturally. But if we don't hear language in those first 6 years, we never develop fully functional language skills. And so it can be problematic over time as we're trying to develop language. And Jeannie, she's discussed on page 229 of your textbook. She actually is a great example of the importance of critical period. She was actually the most severe case of childhood abuse that we've seen in the United States up until her time. And she was not exposed to language at all. So she was trapped and she was caged, often like an animal. She had no interaction with the outside world. And her father didn't allow anybody to communicate with her, use language with her in a normal manner. So she was only exposed to animal sounds and grunting. She never developed full language skills. Even after Child Protective Services came in and she was removed from the home, and her father went to jail, and she received intensive therapy, and she was a topic of great research. And yet, she still was never able to fully develop those language skills. And so, as I mentioned earlier, now there's more of this interactionist perspective where we know that nature and nurture work together, and we operate under this biopsychosocial model where, yes, there are biological factors that predispose us to certain things that might influence our personality. Our psychological interpretation, our own personal interpretation of the events that we're exposed to in the social world do matter, and then clearly our experiences themselves. All of those three things work together to shape us into the person that we are. As part of that interactionist perspective, there are key aspects of our identity that might shape how we interact with the world and also might influence how the world interacts with us. Gender is one such area, such as, I am a female, and so, as such, I am perceived differently in the world, and whether that's good or bad, in some ways it can definitely serve to my advantage, but then in other ways it might be a disadvantage in that, particularly in my financial services background, I may not be viewed as credible or intelligent as that of a male. Whereas I could probably get away with things in a classroom more readily as a female than I can with a male, or as a male. Culture also matters. You know, I come from a collectivist cultural mentality where we're Native Hawaiian and we believe in kind of working together, supporting one another. We realize that we are connected in very profound ways. Some other collectivist cultures like Asian cultures or Hispanic cultures, they greatly value that social collectivism and group harmony and social compliance is really important. Whereas I know I was raised in America here in the mainland, and I have been definitely influenced by the individualistic values of American society, where I'm independent, I'm strong, I'm autonomous, I'm outspoken, my opinion, my individual desires and happiness matter. And that's definitely more prevalent in individualistic cultures. So that cultural influence can definitely shape your individual perspectives and thus your experience in the world. And then another great debate is this concept of stability or change. I mean, are you generally just kind of this person and there's evidence of that stable progression of those traits over your lifespan? Like my son's always been just kind of this easygoing, agreeable baby. His temperament has always been just really easy. Or do we change significantly from one period of our life to another? Do we go through these huge transitions? Again, I would say that it's the combination of both. We do have some pretty stable determinants in our lives, but we do go through stages in life that influence a significant and profound change. This continuity of development, this concept of development being continuous, slow, progressive, incremental change over time, or is it stage-like? Is it qualitatively different from one stage to another? In our early adulthood, are we qualitatively and significantly different than middle and then moving on to late? Or do we just slowly and gradually change over time as human beings? And so I'm going to stop there, and then I'm going to come back and do another video about fetal development.